tomorrow China for mindfulness. And I grew up in the 50s during the Cold War, where we were afraid both of you guys were going to bomb us for real. I'll be back in just a sec.
Yeah. А я пока как раз переведу. Шинзен говорит про то, что через буквально несколько дней в понедельник полетит на месяц в Китай, где будет преподавать практики осознанности, mindfulness для китайцев. И странное и удивительное время, в которое мы живем, потому что тогда, когда он рос и взрослел, предполагалось, что Советский Союз и Китай — это вообще враги, а тут, значит, с экс-Советским Союзом разговаривает. Yeah, so maybe let me give you a short background on what's going on. So there are three countries here right now. It's Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. And many different time zones. I've checked, I don't know, 100 times maybe the time zones, not to, you know. And there are people from the last year's program, like 2018, and there are people from this year's program, and I have two programs in two countries actually. So one in Russia and one in Ukraine, and about 50 people so far. So many huge responsibility, and it wouldn't be possible without your help and your inspiration, of course. So so it's an honor to, you know, have a chance to talk to you about the teaching stuff, and maybe if you have some advice for the beginning teachers. And I've gathered some questions from them. But I don't know whether that's the path that you want to take. But we can go through the questions, or some of the questions at least, that are relevant to teaching as I feel it. And or if you have something to share straight away, then we can, you know, go this way.
I always like questions, so we'll start there and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, cool. Я буду переводить предложение за предложением, так что, в общем, те, кто понимают, понимаете, значит, с двух языков, и потом откомментируете про перевод. I'm just saying that there are quite a few people here who can actually understand English, but for those who cannot, it wouldn't be fair if I, you know, don't translate. So let's take it sentence by sentence and question by question.
Sure.
Okay, so the first the first question is actually deep and simple at the same time. If there is only one advice that you can give to a person who wants to study mindfulness, okay, you have just one chance and one sentence, or, you know, 1 minute. What would be the advice?
Absolutely. There's one answer to that question. Get a competent mindfulness coach who can work with you.
Простой вопрос и простой ответ. Вопрос, если бы было только одно предложение, какой-то совет, который вы можете дать тому, кто хочет обучаться осознанности, то какой будет этот совет? Совет — найти компетентного коуча, преподавателя.
Now, let me add, it's wonderful that they are learning to do that job of being coach for others.
Just a quick technical note that there is a person that can translate just online in chat. So we don't have to spend time just translating, going back and forth. So someone will just translate it in a chat. Okay, our questions and answers.
Okay, so I think we should speak slowly,
right,
to
but
not stress that.
It'll give us double time anyway. Пожалуйста, хорошая идея от Васи. Переводи, Вась, только с английского, естественно, на русский. То есть не нужно переводить то, что пишут, или то, что я говорю, короче, не нужно, только ответы Шинзена. И все, кто хочет читать в переводе, то, пожалуйста, смотрите в чате. Okay, I'll translate what you said before that, the add-on. Okay. И Шинзен сказал, что еще один момент про обучение и преподавание, что чтобы они нашли компетентного коуча и дальше могли бы быть, в свою очередь, компетентными коучами дальше. Okay. And if there is only one advice that you can give to a coach, to a teacher, or a person who wants to teach mindfulness, what that would be?
Let me think. There's a lot of possibilities. Well, the obvious is be well trained. So it's just the same thing. If you want to practice mindfulness, get a good coach. If you want to be a good coach, get a good trainer of coaches. But that's prosaic. That's just sort of logical. There are more poetic ways of responding to that question. The first poetic way is the most important skill for a mindfulness coach, other than understanding mindfulness well, is to deeply love humanity, deeply love the human condition. And the human condition is, in some ways, at this time, rather ugly, actually. And becoming the person that loves humans despite all their flaws, with all their flaws. You love humanity, you love the human condition just as it is. Then you're never disappointed when things don't work out. It's always fulfilling to teach. So I would say, yeah, not just love, but deeply love, and not just love humans, but love humans in all their fucked upness, if you pardon my use. I know there's a Russian equivalent of that.
There sure are many.
Yeah, I'm aware. In fact, there's an entire language based on just those words. But it's an idiom. You love the fucked upness of humanity itself. And then you can be happy and fearless in your job. Now, I could go down the list of other things after loving humans just as they are. I would say communication skills, learning how to use words accurately, and then a familiarity with the windows and walls, the challenges that likely come up, and how to deal with those. But even more importantly, nature is constantly providing little windows of growth, windows for evolution, and spotting those windows and guiding people to use them is a very important skill. Many mindfulness teachers know how to deal with the challenges, the walls, but in the modern mindfulness movement, I've noticed that teachers don't look for the windows. They don't recognize when a person is having a significant experience. So am I talking at an okay pace?
Yeah,
for
sure.
the translation?
Let me just reiterate in Russian for
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Шинзен говорит про окна в практике и про стены, и что вторая важная история, первая — это компетентный преподаватель там и все это, вторая, прошу прощения, первая — преподаватель, вторая — про любовь безусловную к человечеству. И следующая история — это про техничный язык, операционный язык, которому мы много уделяем времени на курсе, и про то, что он видит в современном преподавании осознанности, много вот таких ситуаций, что люди, что инструкторы замечают какие-то препятствия в практике, помогают, в принципе, людям преодолеть эти препятствия, но не очень-то умеют замечать окна, то есть окна возможностей к развитию, к эволюции. So I have maybe two questions here. First is about, well, aren't walls windows? Sort of?
Well, that is true, but that's a little bit a matter of semantics.
Right.
Most walls, many walls. No, let me back up. Walls are windows in two ways. One is, if you know how to work with them, then it's a challenge, it's hard, but it's intense exercise and you grow a lot. So from that perspective, walls can also be good. But there are other ways, more subtle ways, in which walls are windows, actually are windows. Or another way to put it is many problems are solutions to other problems.
Right.
That's subtle. And abstract. Let me make it tangible. So let's say that you have the student focus on mental talk herein. You might say, okay, I want you to pay attention to your mental talk. You could give a simple instruction that way with no more details. What's likely to happen when you come back to the student, say you're guiding them and you come back in 10 minutes and you say, how did that go? It's highly probable if all you said was pay attention to your mental talk, it's highly probable they'll say, I couldn't do it, or I had a problem. Well, you know the basic principle in unified mindfulness is probe, probe, probe. You constantly ask questions. The longer mantra is never assume, probe, probe, probe. So you ask, oh, you should then ask, what was the problem? And they'll probably say, well, I didn't have any mental talk. Or they'll say, as soon as I noticed the mental talk, it went away. So those aren't problems. Those are solutions. Those are good things. But the problem is the way you set up the instruction. Many decades or several decades ago, when I first started to have people work with things like mental image, mental talk, emotional body, people would say they couldn't do it because, particularly for the image and the talk, as soon as they noticed it, it would go away. Or if they placed their attention in talk space or image space, there wasn't any activity. And then they would report that as a problem. Mm-hmm. But the problem was my inept formulation. Then I changed it to go to mental talk space. One of two things will happen. You'll either have mental talk, in which case note it, or you'll hear mental rest, in which case note that as a rest state. All right. And if you have mental talk, one of two things will happen. It will either die away immediately, or it will continue. If it dies away, fine. That's an instance of gone. And that is an instance of impermanence, of flow. It's discrete flow, not continuous flow. It's discrete, right. But it's flow. So in the earlier formulation of my techniques, I failed to describe a couple windows, and therefore students interpreted them as walls or problems. Right. So there's two ways in which a wall or a problem or a challenge can be a growth opportunity. One is, well, it actually is a wall. You're running up a hill, but you're getting strong. The other is that it's actually
not a wall.
Not a problem.
Right.
It's a solution to a problem, a different problem. Mm. So, for example, let's say they do see, hear, feel, and you say, how did it go? And they said, I couldn't do it. You ask why? Well, there's so much vibration that I can't distinguish see, hear, feel. That's not a problem. That's a solution. That's the beginning of the end of the particulate prison of self. So one thing that I've noticed in modern mindfulness teachers is they don't have an algorithm for how things progress. So they'll start students out focusing on the breath, and then a student may have a dissolution experience or an experience of spaciousness. They go to the teacher, and the teacher says, that doesn't mean anything. Why are you interested in that? Just come back to the breath. So they force them to do what at that point is boring and uninteresting practice. And they fault the student for noticing a natural window. Our facilitators would say, that's great, that's flow, that's spaciousness, if you want, you can come back to the breath, or if you want, we can explore that direction. So I would say what is distinctive to unified mindfulness, well, not distinctive, but a unified mindfulness contrasts with a lot of other mindfulness systems in that we don't just point out the walls, we point out the windows.
Right. So let me just again translate it maybe in a few.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Strokes. Окей. Шинзен говорит про очень важную штуку, про операциональный язык, и что он раньше, Вася, это, кстати, ответ на твой вопрос, что раньше он в основном тоже помогал людям справляться с трудностями, сложностями, или, может быть, формулировал инструкции таким образом, что люди приходили с каким-то ответом, и как будто бы это сложность, с которой они столкнулись. Хотя на самом деле это вполне может быть решение, просто может быть решение более глубокой проблемы. Например, человек концентрируется и говорит: я не могу концентрироваться, у меня все течет, все плывет. Можно сказать, что это проблема, и, то есть надо усиливать концентрацию на дыхании, скажем. Можно сказать: окей, давай наблюдать за потоком, да, как за тем, что проявляется. То есть стал больше, и в принципе стал больше формулировать это в терминах как бы всей системы целиком. Я сейчас уточню еще один вопрос у него. So would you say that the way you began to formulate it, and actually we stress operational language a lot in in our program here, that you have to be precise, you have to be, and like a lot of things depend, actually the whole service thing depends on how well you formulate your instructions and how well you guide people. So would you say that basically it's about the mindfulness approach in general? So you kind of saying that whatever you encounter in your practice is a way to further the practice, basically.
That is definitely a general principle,
right.
Yes.
Right. But there is another kind of facet of this walls and windows situation, that it's easier to deal with walls because that's what pretty much everyone comes across in their practice, like drowsiness, sleepiness, whatever, agitation, distractions, and so on and so on. Pain, definitely. Now, but to recognize windows, you have to be either you have to know some kind of a map or a general direction, or you have to be well advanced stream enter, whatever, to kind of know how to navigate the territory. So maybe, or not maybe, I think that that's why among the modern mindfulness teachers, there are many people who can deal with walls and not windows, because the whole idea of the secularized kind of mindfulness, that it doesn't have the Dharma component in it, so it doesn't have a direction, basically, or a liberation.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I do believe that in order to be a significant influence in the world, we have to take out any factors that present barriers to entry. And religious belief systems are a barrier to entry. If so, in unified mindfulness, we have taken out the requirement to believe in any kind of religion. But now you're saying in the religion of origin of the current mindfulness movement, which is Buddhism, basically, there are these elaborate maps. If we eliminate the cultural baggage, and if we eliminate the doctrinal barriers, that doesn't mean that we have to eliminate a map. We can have a map of what could happen, but I think that the map should not be, that the map needs to address the fact that often one will loop back to a certain theme. A lot of the maps are completely linear. You have this stage, this stage, this stage, this stage. And that's one possibility, but a generalization of a fully linear, a linear map is a kind of directed graph mathematically. Let me draw.
And let me take a pause and translate here also, because it's significant, I think, for the people who want to teach, you know, this modern mindfulness, secular version of mindfulness. Мы сейчас говорим про то, что многие преподаватели в современном mindfulness лучше понимают, как работать со стенами, а не окнами, потому что, чтобы работать с окнами, нужно понимать, куда это все идет и к чему это все движется. А это в современной версии, в отрыве от каких-то оригинальных корней, которые были в религиозной традиции, это потерялось. То есть как бы mindfulness становится типа вещью в себе. И, соответственно, как можно... Окна превосхождения, они превосхождение, то есть это какое-то направление к чему-то. Раньше это было в контексте просветления, очевидно. Да, сейчас, значит, это чуть-чуть потерялось. Шинзен говорит о том, что да, но для того, чтобы снизить барьер на то, чтобы люди начали заниматься практикой, мы, естественно, весь этот религиозный язык убираем, но да, сталкиваемся со сложностью, что территория становится менее понятной. Территория традиционно, есть разные способы про это говорить. Есть способ, когда это последовательная какая-то штука, стадия за стадией жестко, или какие-то другие варианты. И стал рисовать математический график. Okay. So what's a directed graph?
So this is an example of the way the maps are often presented.
Right.
A more general, this is a directed graph. This is a path graph. Actually, that's what it's called. Okay. This is a path graph, and this is a fully general directed graph.
So that looks like your algorithmic approach.
Well, it is absolutely an algorithm.
Right.
It can loop, it can branch, it can loop back. There can be alternate paths, etc. So in the broadest context, I suspect we need to model things this way. There is some place for this kind of model also. But just because it's a modern system without the Buddhist model doesn't mean that we can't distinguish a map of the territory. So I can tell you what the common windows are that teachers might miss. I'll go.
Yeah, sure.
I'll let you.
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Did you want go ahead and repeat?
Шинзен говорит, что да, конечно, в его понимании преподавание больше похоже на такой алгоритмический подход, в котором могут быть всевозможные комбинации, возвращения обратно, циклы там, и так далее. И он не видит причины, по которой бы серьезный подход не мог бы существовать в рамках секулярного языка. И сейчас предлагает несколько таких типичных окон, которые современные преподаватели осознанности часто могут упускать.
The windows are actually visible on the technique grid. A lot of the themes in the broader ultra grid are in fact windows. Go ahead and translate.
Шинзен говорит про табличку техник в рамках системы Unified Mindfulness или ультра универсальная таблица, универсальная библиотека техник. Конкретно эту мы еще не смотрели, посмотрим на этом модуле как раз. Вот такую табличку, но то же самое применимо и к понятной вам табличке «Вижу, слышу, чувствую внутри, снаружи, покой и поток».
So, one of the reasons we start people out broadly with see, hear, feel is we can then from there query whether any windows are present. For example, we can ask them, let's say, we can ask them, when you noted feel, did it tend to be solid or was it wavy, vibratory, and so forth? When you noted hear, was it like changing or, likewise for the visual? If they report significant fluidity in all three modalities, that's a huge window. And they can go to emphasizing see, hear, feel, flow. Now, or you can find out, did any positive emotion come up in the body just spontaneously? That's a window. That's a window to feel good, and that's important. If there was a lot of tranquility, spaciousness, and so forth, that happens even for beginners. Those are windows. Go ahead and
right. I'm typing actually simultaneously. So.
Oh my God!
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I'm like wickedly impressed. Are you a drum player that has 4-limb independence?
Not at all, but it's demanding anyway.
Well, thank you for your work. So the another area where windows comes up is the situation where a certain sensory category has not been accessible and then suddenly becomes accessible. So a lot of people don't have much conscious mental image activity, but maybe they got sleep deprived and they're now having lots of images. Well, that's new. And that's a window to work with see in. Some people during formal practice don't get much body emotion. Or some people hardly ever get body emotion, even in life. But maybe due to some circumstance, their emotional body is quite vivid. That's a window. So themes of transcendence, themes that move people towards the source in terms of expansion, contraction? Well, tranquility, generic flow, spaciousness. Those things can be present during a beginner session. And if they happen to be there, it's something that can be explored. Now, it's also important for facilitators to realize that just because a window presents itself does not necessarily mean that you must immediately change the guidance to pursue that. As a general principle, we like to ask the student what they want to do, what's interesting for them. So maybe I have someone and they request breath, and I have them do the breath, and at some point they have see, hear, feel, flow. It's very prominent everywhere. I might say to them, okay, now we have a choice. If you want, we can stay with the breath, which is what you originally requested. But you're having this other thing, and then I explain its significance. So if you want, we can stay with the breath, or we can do see, hear, feel, flow, which appeals to you. So one of the mistakes a facilitator can easily make is to assume that if some window or some wall presents itself, that you must change the guidance necessarily to address that. You don't have to necessarily, but you might want to give the client or the student a choice explaining the significance. So that's also something to keep in mind, I would say.
Yeah, we went through the algorithmic approach that you offer in one of the handouts about how to help yourself and others, or others and yourself, including yourself. And one of the things there is to ask a lot of questions to confirm what is the direction that a client wants, a student wants to take, that it's empowering and all that. So it makes a person responsible for the choice after all. So would you say that transcendence is the general direction?
If you look at the ultra grid, it starts with see, hear, feel, then you have see, hear, feel in, see, hear, feel out, then you have rest, flow, spaciousness, and then the self-inquiry type techniques, and then working with expansion, contraction. And as you know, my model for liberated consciousness is expansion, contraction. So obviously, we want to move a person in that direction. One technique to do that is work with expansion, contraction itself. However, if you get good guidance in a turn back or self-inquiry, sort of see back, hear back, feel back, if you get good guidance in that from a non-dual teacher or from us, because we have our version of that, you'll eventually come to expansion and contraction through the self-inquiry approach. So if you look at the progression, starting broadly with see, hear, feel, so then you go to tranquility, general fluidity, spaciousness defined very specifically, and then the source itself. So in general, that's where there is a general linear map over the period of 30, 40, 50, 60 years of practice. One would tend to go from everything is surface and solidified to things are marginally fluid, to things are very fluid and spacious, to the combination of fluidity and spaciousness that is expansion and contraction. But this might be an average over an entire lifetime. Locally, you get this kind of stuff going on. So, if we make this a fractal and just look at this one arrow, in fact, this might represent 10 years or 5 years, but what's going on actually day by day is something more like this. So yeah, from the surface to the source is a general paradigm. So you look for things that are moving people towards the transcendence quadrant, or you look for sensory phenomena that they haven't had before that are enriching them. And that's a window also. Now here's a great,
right? So appreciate, yeah, and transcend.
Right, but there's a relationship because transcendence is merely taking appreciation to the limit. If you go all the way with appreciate, you go beyond form.
Yes. Yes. So that relates to the idea of the big happy and the little happy that you talked, at least, well, I heard you talk about that once.
Oh, you're going to have to remind me.
You know, okay. I think it comes from the talks on teachings, the series or this.
Oh yes, that's right. No,
and
little happy, yeah.
Right. So you were talking about about coaching a person that comes to you. For example, I want to be better at playing tennis. That was the example that you used, and then you can teach concentration and, you know, everything, CC and E, and then somehow some kinds of windows at least have to present themselves, which is your job at that point to kind of show that there is a bigger picture and a bigger happy, that the same set of skills can be applied to different domains and so on and so on.
Thanks for reminding me of that terminology. I'd actually forgotten, but it's good phraseology.
I think so.
So can I digress for a moment?
Sure.
I do want to make sure though that maybe we should take some more questions, because once you start me on auto speak, there's no off button.
And I'm not asking about the ultrasonic transcranial stimulation because it can.
Well, you should. I got a picture I want to show you. Maybe at the end.
Cool. I want to desperately, actually.
Oh, really? Well, let's save that for the end.
To know what's happening in the lab, you know.
It's crazy, dude. But let's save that for the frosting. We'll eat the cake first.
Sure. Okay.
Then we'll save the frosting.
Okay, cool. So another related question is whether you have to, how should I put it? So for example, a person comes to you with a certain issue or a request or, you know, a problem. Do you have to have the same problem dealt with in the past in order to know how to best navigate a person through that. You know,
oh,
do you have to actually have the actual experience of what the person asks, or can you make an approximation and, you know?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You can make an approximation.
Basically,
Absolutely.
basically.
Because general principles apply.
Right.
However, if you yourself have had that problem, it means you're going to be able to teach more effectively in certain ways. It's not required, but it helps. First of all, it gives you credibility. If you yourself have dealt with that type and that intensity of a challenge. Secondly, it's easier to communicate with the person because you've shared that experience. So I know you know Chinese. You probably, do you know any Japanese?
Well, I studied it in college,
that's impressive.
But
so
I don't remember anything anyway.
Yeah, in Japanese they say dobyo ai awaremu. It's probably from Chinese originally, I think. Dobyo ai awaremu means people that share the same illness can sympathize with each other. There's a communication that occurs. So it gives you credibility and it facilitates communication, but it's not required. That's the beauty of the system, is it actually is a panacea or a one size fits all, because relief, fulfillment, deepening self-understanding, positive behavior change, and a call to service summarize all of human happiness, all of the problems and all of the good stuff. So whatever they come to you for, in the end, it is some combination of subsets of those basic elements. And the basic strategies are identical. Generically, relief from suffering is relief from suffering. So I don't have cancer, but I can guide a cancer patient because my legs hurt during sitting. But it goes further. I'm not addicted to gambling, but I did have procrastination. Now they seem different. One is something that you were avoiding, another one is something you need to avoid. However, the basic strategies are actually similar. And so that is the beauty of modern mindfulness. So I was going to say, this now leads into the digression. So apology, we're going to digress. So I am an unashamed, unabashed geek. I am a total geek. And all of my friends, not all, many of my friends are geeks. I don't know if you have a Russian equivalent to what we mean by that.
We just use geek, basically.
Yeah, I figured.
Because it's a new word anyway. So.
Yeah, so geek. So this is a geek story I'm going to tell. So if you're not a geek, if you don't like math, maybe you won't like this, but there was a 20th century Hungarian mathematician named Alfred Renyi. And he had an interesting definition of what a mathematician is. So I think you all know that mathematicians attempt to find a kind of mathematical truth that we call theorems, theorema. Maybe you say theorema in
We actually do
Russian.
say teorema. Exactly.
Theorema.
Yeah, which is softened.
Theorema, theorema, theorems. So Régnier famously defined mathematician as a device to transform coffee into theorems. So now I'm going to paraphrase Régnier. A modern mindfulness teacher is a device to transform small happy into big happy. So here's what I mean. Everyone in the world wants to be happy. Everyone. I don't care who you are. You want to be happy. Now, how you define happiness will vary. Maybe you have a salient problem. You have chronic pain, or you got addicted to drugs because you had chronic pain. So you might have one big problem in your life that is dominating. Or there may be one thing in your life where you should be fulfilled, but you're not. And it's just, so happiness for that person right now is get relief from this particular problem, help me find more fulfillment in this particular activity, whatever it is. The world will come to a modern mindfulness teacher, typically with a small happiness request, relatively small. I know pain relief is not small, but relative to the whole spectrum of what humans want.
Yeah, with a particular problem anyway.
Yeah,
sure.
They come with a concept of a request for a small happy often. Now, the beauty of this is that first of all, we can address that request by explaining maybe 2, 3, as many as 4 focus options, and where would you like to start? And then we take on that request. Let's say they say that they have a lot of agitation. That's a real common, like, help me with this stressful agitation. So you could say, okay, well, I can show you how to feel rest, or I can show you how to focus in and break the agitation into image, talk, body, emotion. Let's say they say, okay, I'm going to turn towards it. Teach me the focus in thing. And you give them divide and conquer, untangle and be free strategy. And let's say it works. So you delivered on their small happy. But then you can now say, so we can also use this approach to help you understand yourself at deeper levels, maybe get them into the arising, passing, or other forms of flow within the inner system. Well, now we're extending the help me with surface stress to help me find my deepest spiritual essence. But it's the same technique, just applied a different way. The facilitator can also say, are there any behavior changes you want to make? They say yes. You don't even have to know what the behavior change is. All you have to know, you don't have to know if it's something they want to start or stop. You do have to know that. That's helpful to know. I'm trying to stop doing X. I want to start doing X. But you don't have to know what X is. You don't have to know if it's big or small, serious or trivial. So let's say, yes, they say, I want to make a behavior change. You say, is it something you want to stop or start? If they say stop, you show them how to deconstruct the negative urge. If they say start, maybe you give them a nurture positive. They're using the same sensory elements, in one case, exactly the same technique. You're now extending the original small happy request to a larger and larger paradigm for what happiness is. And this is how a modern mindfulness coach addresses the concern from the Buddhist establishment that modern mindfulness will lose the spiritual, quote, spiritual and quote, ethical. Yeah. There's a concern from the Buddhist establishment that modern mindfulness, people that teach the way we teach, I teach, will lose the spiritual and ethical component that is present in the culture of origin. Right. But they don't have to have that concern. This is how we cover it. We cover the spiritual component by showing them that the same techniques that can give them a little stress reduction can also dissolve self and world back into pure spirit. Depending on who we're working with, we might not use religious vocabulary, but flow is flow. If you call it chi, right, that's just a secular word. Right. If you call it insight into impermanence, that's a Buddhist concept. They're the same thing. Mm-hmm. So the elegance is that the same sensory categories and the same focus techniques that address their initial small happiness request can be used to broaden the scope of their happiness quest, including positive behavior change. So in Buddhism and other religions, they give you a list of rules. We don't do that. We may have some general guidelines in the background, but I do not recommend you start telling people what's morally right and wrong, unless they ask or you're an expert in the field. But what you can always ask is there something big or small, positive or negative, committed or uncommitted? That's 8 possibilities. Are you interested in behavior change of one of those 8 forms? Everyone is going to say yes. And then you deliver that. And then you can start to talk about, well, want to make any other behavior changes? And now we're off and running on character development without a whole good, bad, religious, moralistic framework. Mm-hmm. So transform requests that may be requests for small happy without there is a smooth and natural way to broaden and deepen what they want. So this is upaya. In traditional Buddhism, outreach. In English, that word is usually, upaya is translated skillful means. In Chinese, as you know, Victor, it's fangbian, which is expedient. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't really capture it either. Upaya is upaya. It is approach. Aya is to come. Upa is come nigh, come hither, mm-hmm. come to me, approach me. So how do we make nirvana, how do we make moksha and shila? How do we make liberation and character something that people are really interested in doing? How do we make that approachable? Well, the Buddhist tradition said, we'll figure out different clever ways to get people into the temple. We'll teach them the tea ceremony, and we'll show them that they can have a little samadhi while they do the tea ceremony, and then some of those people might actually go on to practice. Or, somewhat more controversial, when Zen first came to Japan, the rulers of Japan were the military caste, the samurai. So you're not going to be able to build your Zen temple unless the shogun says, okay. And how do you, so we're living in 12th century Japan. I'm a Chan master, I'm a Zen master. A Japanese person that went to China, I learned Chan. It's called Zen in Japanese. Now I'm a Zen master, and I want to start spreading this practice in Japan. How can I upaya? How can I make this something that the badass general who's running the show can relate to? And believe me, the samurai were badass. They're killers. They're soldiers. So, okay, I'm the Zen master, you're the samurai. What do you want? I want to be able to kill and be killed without fear. That's what I want. Oh, okay, I can help you with that. And I can. And if, yeah, I've already worked for the US military.
Right, isn't that strange how it all goes? Yeah.
I might end up working for the Chinese military. I'm not kidding, they're interested in this. They know that the Americans teach mindfulness.
Right.
They know that.
Right.
And it is something that they're watching. In the most bizarre scenario that I can think of, I would end up teaching Chinese soldiers mindfulness skills, a potential adversary of the US. However, this is a very dangerous area ethically to get involved in, because a soldier is a human being and they deserve to have mindfulness skills. And they deserve, for two reasons, for them and for others. Because if they have mindfulness skills, they're less likely to cause collateral damage. Bad decisions in the field that hurt innocent people happen all the time, that could be prevented if soldiers were more mindfully trained. The other thing is, they come back terribly emotionally damaged. I think you had that problem with Afghanistan, and we have it here. It's pathetic. It's so sad. And they made a sacrifice for their country, and now they're just, they can't live. Their life has been taken away.
Еще раз? Не, он должен.
Oh, it's okay.
There's some censor listening that's cutting off this conversation because it's too controversial. Could be anyone. Could be you guys.
Sure.
Could be,
yeah.
It could be us. It could be the fucking Chinese.
Someone's always watching. Yeah.
Anyway, so it's an interesting question.
Yeah,
And
right.
Zen got established in Japan precisely because they said we can deliver on what you want.
They could translate it to the military, yeah?
Yeah, to the military.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a problem with that. And I'm not going to get into details, but I think there's a way around the problem, but there is actually a significant ethical problem. And yet, on the other hand, a soldier is a human being, and a soldier deserves not to make bad karma and not to come back a wounded,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
a spiritually wounded person. So anyway, that's an extreme example. But, you know, it's a crazy world now.
Yeah, it's relevant. I mean, now I mostly stay these years in Ukraine, and a lot of people are involved into the war that's happening here. So many soldiers and people who migrated from the affected areas to the safer areas, but they have this post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety in general.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but in the US, many of the veterans programs, the hospitals that care for US Army military veterans, they have mindfulness programs.
Yeah,
it's quite widespread.
Sure. And well, so my take on that is, of course, is that all people are people. So it depends on why you teach mindfulness to those people. It's about the intentions, and if it's not about the intentions, not to have stress when killing people, that maybe it's a wrong intention, basically. But if it makes you more aware of your own feelings about the subject, or makes you regulate yourself after the disaster that happened to you or whatever, then maybe it's a good intention. But
right. So
sure.
Yeah, in the old days, the idea of the upaya, or the outreach, the make this approachable, was fairly limited. Because that's where we get the Zen and the art of archery, Zen and the art of tea ceremony. But tea ceremony, archery, those are fairly specialized activities. The modern upaya of a modern mindfulness teacher is much, much more powerful. We don't say, okay, we'll teach you how to do flower arrangement, and that's mini meditation. We ask you, what do you want? And we've got a happiness grid that classifies, and we've got a technique grid that classifies, and we can relate those. So this notion of transforming a request for small happy into a quest for broad and deep happy. This modern notion of upaya, I even sometimes in Sanskrit may say abhinavopaya. That means the new form of upaya, abhinava in Sanskrit. Abhinavopaya. This is the modern upaya, and it is incomparably more convenient than what the cultures of the past were able to come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
maybe you want to translate for a second while I get some more drink? I'll come back.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Вот вся эта долгая история, она была про то, как мы можем взаимодействовать с запросами студентов и их запросом на маленькое счастье, Да, и помните про маленькое счастье и большое счастье, вот этот вот аспект этики, который затрагивался на первом модуле, и я пробовал это акцентировать на этом внимание, в принципе, на каждом модуле, и те из вас, все украинские и уже некоторые российские студенты, вы знаете, что ваши видео экзаменационные я тоже в каждом или почти в каждом на это так или иначе указывал в разделе от обратной связи про этику, про то, что, может быть, вот здесь была возможность сделать мостик к чему-то большему. Может быть, вы там это не сделали. Вот, и говорили про упаю. Упая — это искусственное средство, чаще всего переводится, но в более корректном переводе, как сказал Шинзен, с санскрита это значит «иди сюда». То есть, условно говоря, способ приманивать человека в хорошем смысле слова, и, соответственно, вот этот способ заинтересовать в том, что ты даешь, это вот искусственное средство. То есть как я могу заинтересовать генерала армии в этой теме, как я могу заинтересовать, не знаю, бизнесмена, это дальше уже я начинаю развивать здесь, как я могу заинтересовать ребенка, и для каждого могут найтись какие-то свои слова. Тоже в обратной связи вы знаете, некоторым писал, что вот ваше объяснение достаточно универсально, или что я чувствую, что вы можете для разных аудиторий работать, или вот это ваше объяснение, оно сработает хорошо вот для этой аудитории. Обратная связь по презентации теории. Ну вот как-то так. А до этого говорили про то, насколько... То есть мой основной вопрос был, хорошо, проблема с окнами и стенами, и в том, что современные преподаватели, больше понимают, как справляться со сложностями, чем видят вот эти вот открывающиеся окошки к чему-то большему, потому что карта потеряна этого самого движения к чему-то большему. Да, и вот с этого все началось. И что это за карта, Шинзен традиционно дает достаточно расплывчатый ответ, поскольку, в принципе, не является большим поклонником карт. Но при этом его версия карты — это вот то, что называется ультра или универсальная библиотека тренировки внимания, и ее 4 квадрата с техниками. Я хочу это показать в субботу вечером или даже, может быть, в воскресенье утром на ближайшем модуле. И это вот как раз та карта, которая указывает на возможные измерения, в которых можно двигаться. Но основное, то, о чем вот он тоже вспоминал и говорил, вы знаете, это вот периодическая таблица элементов счастья с разной степенью глубины в облегчении страдания, увеличении удовлетворения, повышении удовлетворения, углубление знания себя, изменение позитивного поведения и направление к служению другим, да, вот эти 5 элементов, в которых можно углубляться. А вопрос, с которого все это совсем-совсем началось, он про то, что могу ли я преподавать людям, помогать пройти через что-то, с чем я сам не сталкивался. И он говорит, что, в принципе, да, если вы знаете общий подход. Потому что общий подход так или иначе. Я хочу избавиться от страданий или повысить степень удовлетворения, или поменять что-то в моем поведении. Хорошо. Как ты хочешь поменять свое поведение? Я хочу начать что-то делать, или я хочу перестать что-то делать. Окей, ты хочешь перестать что-то делать, тогда мы взаимодействуем к примеру, с твоими позывами к этому негативному действию, учимся их деконструировать в моменте, так, чтобы они меньше захватывали, и окей, типа, задача решена. Если начать что-то делать, может быть, это про мету, про культивацию позитивного, про визуализацию этого и как бы движение в сторону того, идеала, и медитация на этот идеал, к которому хочется двигаться, усиление в себе вот этих качеств, в том, что я вижу, том, что я слышу, том, что я чувствую. Вопросов еще на самом деле миллион. Ну нет, не миллион, ну 10 точно есть. Через 10 не успеем пройти, но несколько, мне кажется, еще таких ключевых успеем как раз затронуть.
Hi.
Yeah. Welcome back. So I've just talked about the whole conversation that we had actually, and you know, in terms of generalizing the approach or being able to refer to or give teaching onto something that you haven't been through yourself, I usually talk in addition to the periodic table of happiness elements about the, well, I call it a letters of contemplative alphabet, basically. I'm talking about the see, hear, feel, in, out, rest and flow. So basically you have either 3 letters in this contemplative alphabet, or you can say it's 6 letters or 12 letters, but the idea is the same. They can be written in very many different types and scripts. But if you learn to recognize that A is an A in different variations, or K is K in different variations, you know how to deal with that.
Oh yeah, you make a nice metaphor. The letter is the same regardless of the type font.
Right.
Suffering is suffering.
Exactly. Or see-in is a see-in regardless of what is actually the content of what you are seeing in. So, yeah. Okay, let's maybe switch to another question and maybe discuss 1 or 2 before we go to the ultrasound thing, frosting. Question is about the dying process, talking about the deep stuff or the hard stuff. And, you know, here students are coming from very different backgrounds. So some are teaching kids, some are teaching, you know, office workers, some are teaching the general public, some are teaching the executives, and so on and so on. So there are a few people who work already or want to work with the dying. And the question that I received is, if there is, again, if there is one advice that you can give to a person who wants to work with the dying people, accompany them through the process of dying, what would that advice be?
Well, maybe I can give 2 or 3 advices.
Sure.
That would summarize it. So, first of all, there are 2 situations with someone who is actively dying. One is that they're still able to talk and communicate. They're, you know, the phrase compos mentis in Latin. They're, you know, they're mentally able to function and to communicate with you. The second situation is they're too exhausted and medicated to do that. That usually comes more towards the end. So sorry, my battery's getting a little low. I may have to recharge in a minute, but we're okay for a couple minutes. So The first thing that I ask for a person when I start to work with them, they of course have to be compos mentis. I have to be able to, establish a relationship. So I ask them, if at some point you can't communicate with me, do you still want me to be here speaking some guidance? Or would you prefer to be left alone? Because, and I tell the dying people that it is known that often people just want to be left alone. They don't want their space invaded by anything. So I find out whether they want me to continue some form of guidance, even if they can't communicate with me. That way, I don't have to worry if when they're at the end and they can't communicate, they've given me permission to give them some guidance in that situation. So that's just a practical strategy. In terms of how to guide someone, I guess the second assumption that I make is that the dying process is a natural window to transcendence, rather than the dying process is some sort of horrible thing that is a taboo subject. So it's an attitude thing. My attitude is, it's natural to have a good death. We have an English word, euthanasia.
Same.
Euthanasia, something like that, I'm guessing.
Euthanasia, yes.
Yeah. Here and probably there, it actually means mercy killing. You kill someone. However, that's not the original Greek meaning. F or eu means good. Thanatos is death, a good death. So there's a natural good way to die. And just as a midwife understands the process whereby baby comes into the world, the reverse midwife, the death coach, and we here actually call them thanadul or thanatologist, the death coach. The death coach doesn't kill people, but the death coach understands how nature takes people out of life. So the midwife helps the baby come into life. The reverse midwife or death coach helps a person go out of life by knowing the natural way to come into life. You're a good midwife. By knowing the natural way to leave life, you're a good death coach. And essentially, the easiest way to guide people is with rest states. They become very tired, and it's not, they don't want to move. They can't move. So you can teach them feel rest, so they're not subtly fighting with the fatigue, but they reinterpret it as a restful experience. Then they may have brightness or darkness or things like that. Sea rest is available. So I usually have people start out with restful states. And usually we go the whole way just with restful states. And you find out if they're able to enjoy the restful experience, And usually they are. So you have them focus on the pleasantness of the restfulness. And then I tell them that death is just a form of see, hear, feel, rest that is very extreme. But they're on a path for that. And to the extent to which they experience safety, fulfillment, connection as the result of the restful state, well, to that extent, it's just going to be more of the same. That's how I guided my own mother through her death, and it worked just fine. Now there's other things, other factors, but I would say those are the main ones. Find out if they want to have guidance after you can't communicate, so you don't have to worry about that. I teach them at least see rest with their eyes closed and feel rest, and just work with that. Now, sometimes you might need to go to some other things, but those techniques are pretty simple. You have to keep things simple for people that are going through that process. The other thing is, I do try to make sure that they're getting adequate end-of-life care medically, palliative care. So I'm like 75 years old. When my father was my age, he was already dead. I'm the beneficiary of modern medicine that already we're living 10, 20 years longer than even our parents. That's just amazing. But still at 75 and still in good health, I know that's not going to last much longer. You know, sooner I'm going to be dying, and time passes very quickly as you get old. So it's a palpable reality. The thing is, I'll almost certainly be in North America when that happens. And we do have good care for the dying at this point. I am assuming I will be under hospice care. And it is the mission of hospice that the dying person not physically or emotionally suffer, no matter how much opioids you have to give them. So in a sense, I don't have to worry about the medical side of things, that I'm going to have to face some horrible, prolonged suffering, because that's somewhat covered by the fact that I'm going to be in hospice. So when I work with a dying person, I try to confirm that they have adequate palliative end-of-life care. And I don't know how it is in the countries where we're broadcasting to, but
it's bad,
good thing,
generally speaking.
Jesus, that's
good.
sad.
Good.
And I'm sure China is probably not very good either.
No.
But one of the things about North America is
Sure.
You actually don't have to worry about that. So I make sure that they've got palliative care. And I make sure I confirm the thing I mentioned. And now I'm off and running. It's simple. I'll just teach them how to focus on rest and keep them going deeper and deeper. I'm going to have to focus on recharging my battery.
Okay.
And I will be back in just a second.
Yep.
Meanwhile, you can
Yep.
elaborate.
Sure. Вопрос был про сопровождение, умирающих людей, очевидно, и вопрос был, какой один совет вы можете дать. И, конечно, хорошо работать, когда все базовые потребности этих людей закрыты. Так намного легче, чем как в наших странах, где эти базовые потребности у абсолютного большинства не закрыты. И это слегка все будет усложнять. Поэтому вероятно, что придется работать, и это я уже elaborate, как он и попросил, придется работать и со стыдом, и с дискомфортом, и с болью, и со смятением, и с кучей всего того, с чем, может быть, в странах, значит, просвещенной демократии людям, может быть, уже не так актуально работать, по счастью. Вот. Но предполагаю, что это слегка сложнее у нас, в том числе из-за этого. Больше аспектов, из-за которых сложнее сфокусироваться, собственно, на основной работе. А основная работа — отпускание, покой. И вот то, мне кажется, ключевое, что Шинзен сказал в этом плане, это что в каком-то смысле смерть — это абсолютная ситуация абсолютного визуального, аудиального и телесного покоя. И, соответственно, если у людей появляется вкус и удовольствие к вот этим типам относительного покоя, который они начинают все больше и больше испытывать по мере умирания, то это позволяет примириться и легче отпустить, и легче хотеть перейти к этому абсолютному покою, потому что если это уже кайфушечки, то, может быть, там дальше еще больше кайфушечки. В таком духе. Yeah, isn't it one of the great things about what we do is that you can teach a tennis player to be better at tennis. You can guide a person through the dying process. You can help people become more awakened, and so many different applications of the same basic thing, same basic principles. So maybe it's time to talk about how we can enhance our traditional understanding of how to skillfully work with people within all those domains by using technology and
sure,
of all kinds.
Yeah. So before we do that, though, I just want to show you something that I formulated this morning.
Okay.
I think you're going to enjoy this. This is just for you and any other person who reads Chinese. So I'm preparing PowerPoint slides.
Okay, modern mindfulness in the center, and contemplative practice, and science on the sides. And
it says, I just abbreviated. I said, 可能助修, so it means 科学会能,
science can help contemplative practice.
That's right. And down here, it says the reverse.
The reverse.
And then down here it says 严格科学与人心修行有自然的互相关系. So you can even translate that into Russian if you want. It says contemplative practice and rigorous science have a natural mutual connection. So this is a complete formulation. As you can see, Victor, because you know Chinese, it's very natural sounding in Chinese.
Yeah.
My whole system, when you translate it into Chinese, it sounds very Chinese.
Very natural,
and I think it's because I've been so influenced by Chinese culture. Here's the English of exactly the same thing. So I just thought that was sort of fun because you have that language ability. Okay.
Right. Let me translate for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Шинзен говорит здесь о том, что в его понимании современного mindfulness, modern mindfulness, вот современной осознанности, современного подхода осознанности, это когда тщательная наука и глубокая созерцательная практика взаимодополняют, взаимоусиливают друг друга. И сейчас это как бы уникальная такая вот история. Шинзен называет это свадьбой тысячелетия, союз тысячелетия, союз науки и I'm talking about the marriage of the millennium.
I even understand that Russian word soyuz. Wasn't that the
union,
name of
union,
yeah,
soyuz,
yeah,
union,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Okay, well, on that theme, so I am now co-director of a neuroscience laboratory at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm actually getting a paycheck from a top 10 US research university. And on my paycheck, it says research scientist. I'm very proud of that because I have no degree in science at all.
Right.
I have zero formal training in math or science. But when I was a little boy, I dreamed of being a scientist. What is it, a nauknik? What do you call a scientist in Russian?
Ученый.
I just made up a word.
Yeah, well, you guessed the root correctly. So it's uch, right?
What do you say?
Ученый, we say. Ученый.
Ученый. Okay. So my dream was to be a scientist. So anyway, we now have a lab, and we have been promised significant funding directly from the president of the university. They want us to come up with a mindfulness, a technology-boosted mindfulness program for the treatment of pain and addiction. Because what happens here, and I'm sure it happens there too, people have pain problems and then they are given narcotic analgesics that are horrifically addictive. And now they have pain and addiction. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's an epidemic of recreational use of narcotic addictive substances. So they want to create a clinic with new technologies for treating these kinds of things. So our lab is called SEMA Lab, Sonication Enhanced Mindfulness Acquisition. That's a technology we're working on. So we direct low intensity focused ultrasound to regions of the brain to hopefully enhance neuroplasticity. And that I think you should translate. That's a big concept.
Yeah, okay. Шинзен говорит про то, что вот в этой лаборатории в Аризоне они заинтересованы в том, чтобы, то есть, почему это все финансируется и почему вот он шутит, что у него теперь есть официальная зарплата из университета, где написано, что он настоящий ученый, разработчик, что-то, что он всегда мечтал, кем всегда мечтал быть, что они заинтересованы в поиске решений проблемы аддикции и боли, как можно при помощи технологий усилить момент с осознанностью, чтобы то, в свою очередь, усиливало или облегчало работу с болью и аддикциями. И идея в том, что воздействуя низкой силы ультразвуковыми волнами на определенные части мозга, можно усиливать нейропластичность, предположительно, этих регионов или нет, сейчас уточню. So by directing this ultrasound to different parts of the brain, you can enhance neuroplasticity of those parts, or do you inhibit some of the zones to make other easier, accessible, or what's happening there?
So the answer, you ask what is happening, and the answer is we don't know and no one knows. This is bleeding edge, not leading edge. We have an idiom, bleeding edge. It's like, it's
I get the humor, of course.
Yeah. So this is, there are only a handful of laboratories in the entire world that are doing ultrasonic neuromodulation research. And we're probably the only one that's doing it for enhancing mindfulness. So the first thing that's important to realize is that in the past, contemplative teachers have essentially delivered two elements. They've delivered a conceptual model, which in Sanskrit is called the darshana, or view. Here's a conceptual model. Actually, it's also called dharma. Here's a conceptual model. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. And the other component that is provided is focus techniques and practice structure. So here are the focus techniques. Here's do retreats, do life practice, etc. Focus techniques, practice structure. That's sort of one thing. I guess we could lump it all together and call it a practice structure. So we give you sort of a conceptual structure. Here's the what, why, where, when, how of what we're doing. There's a conceptual structure, and there's a practice structure. We're not replacing either of those components. We're not zapping people who aren't in a training. We're simply adding a third component. You've got a conceptual structure, you've got a practice structure, and now we're going to give you a techno enhancement. And the techno enhancement will make it easier for you to go fast with the practice structure. That's what we want to do. We don't know if we can do that, or if at this point in science, anyone can do that. We don't know. So I would like to say, yeah, we're working. I'd like to say that we can do this, that we can accelerate your practice with this techno boost, but I can't say that.
What's the working
we don't know.
hypothesis? What's the work? Do you have a working hypothesis? What are you testing?
Well, we have dozens of hypotheses.
Okay.
And we're testing everything. We're looking at all, it's all ultrasound though, because ultrasound is precise and flexible and non-invasive. Mm-hmm. And those three qualities are not found anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Things that are precise and flexible are typically invasive. Mm-hmm. Things that are non-invasive are typically not precise or flexible. Mm-hmm. Ultrasound is precise, flexible, and non-invasive. It's the only technology that has those three characteristics currently known. However, nothing else is known. All we know is it's precise, it's flexible, and it's non-invasive. We also know that it is probably safe, but can't guarantee.
So far, at least, yeah.
Yeah, so that's all we've got. Well, not quite. We've got reasons to believe that it is feasible. And the main reason is actually the core teaching of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. The logical structure of the Four Noble Truths says, well, I'm going to elaborate on the implication of the Four Noble Truths. And this is just my elaboration. So other people might disagree, but here's my version of the Four Noble Truths. There is a kind of original completeness that the Buddha called nirvana. But people can't contact it because there's something in the way, something that blocks it. And he said that the thing that blocks it is called tanha, or grasping, this habitual moment by moment non-equanimity, basically. It's called raga dvesha, craving and aversion, but it's essentially non-equanimity. So there's this non-equanimity that is called grasping, and it's a necessary cause for suffering. In other words, for suffering to occur, grasping has to proceed. If you eliminate the grasping, suffering will not occur. But it's more than that. The way the suffering stops occurring is that this original completeness is now available. So the model is that there's an intervention called marga, or path, that is a sufficient cause to eliminate the necessary cause for suffering or non-completeness. But here's the interesting thing about necessary causes. Behind a necessary cause can be another necessary cause. And behind that, yet another one. So it's possible that in order for non-equanimity to occur, there are certain biophysical things that have to happen in the brain before non-equanimity occurs. And if we can suspend that, it should give a person a taste of profound equanimity. And then in that state, number one, it's going to be easier to replicate that state. And number two, you can learn the concentration and clarity skills better in that state, and therefore be able to apply the techniques as happiness strategies better. So if we can identify functional systems in the brain that are necessary causes for the necessary cause of non-completeness, then we can help people get to their primordial completeness much more efficiently. That is the underlying concept. So the areas that we look at and the ultrasound does have the ability to disrupt, in a good way, perhaps, to disrupt functioning. We can cause a system to disconnect with the ultrasound. Now the trick is, number one, to do that, without causing functional harm to a person. So there's that, right? And then the other point is to find the systems to target that will help dramatically. So that's the underlying thought. And I think we're going to wind up now, but I'm going to show you the pick. So last month, Jay Sanguinetti and I, and some other people, cobbled together in our lab in Tucson this device. It's pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
so
a
that's
piece of an art anyway.
Can you see it?
Yeah, sure,
This is a ultrasound transducer.
Mm-hmm.
I've got an EEG cap on. It's going through this amplifier, and then that is my brain in real time. Mm-hmm. Those yellow dots are my posterior cingulate cortex.
Yeah.
All these tubes help us couple the transducer to my head. The mindfulness guidance will be delivered through the headset.
Mm-hmm.
And in our lab, when we put ultrasound energy here, we can see that those are going to turn off. And when they turn off the entire default network. We've actually seen that happen in the scanner. And that default network is thought to be very associated with egoic processing.
Yeah, isn't that what Judson Brewer does with the...
Well, this is Judson's thing, that's right.
Yeah,
and he's got the PCC.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Right here, it so happens that we aimed the transducer here, and that's why you see the PCC. But Judson uses neurofeedback.
Yes.
We deliver direct energy, and it's quite awesome to see, because Jay presses a button and you can actually just see my default network go offline. And that means the medial prefrontal cortex, the inferior parietal, posterior inferior parietal lobule on both sides, medial prefrontal on both sides, posterior cingulate on both sides. So that's 6 regions.
Yeah.
You can, in the scanner, you can actually see them in that instant just decouple all over the brain. The whole system just goes offline. What happens to me? I'm getting a 1-week retreat in 10 minutes.
Sounds intriguing.
Now, well, that should sound intriguing, but it should also elicit skepticism, because that's just me.
Right.
And I am not representative
right.
of human beings
the general
in
public,
general.
Yes.
And I am definitely not representative of an addicted pain victim. So can we get something like that working for the general public? To be honest, I give it 100 to 1. 1 chance out of 100 we can pull this off. However, I'll take those odds. So in science, we talk about the expected value of a piece of research. You multiply the probability of success by the monetary value of the success. And you say that's essentially how important this research is. They know at the University of Arizona that they're asking for what we call high risk, high gain research, meaning it's probably not going to work. But if someone gets lucky, oh my God, now we're talking about the university getting headlines, and we're talking about the world changing, and we're talking about a Nobel Prize. So that's big. So I give it 1 in 100 we can do this. And those are very good odds. because the this will change history. The this will be hundreds of trillions of dollars. So divide 100 trillion by 100, the expected value of our research is easily $1 trillion. And, you know, a trillion here, a trillion there,
sure.
At some point it starts to add up to some real money.
Sure. And also what's good about science anyway is that you can get a failure basically, because if it doesn't work, it still gives you a lot of new
learn stuff
onto ultrasound workings on the brain. So, right.
Yep. So thank you so much for organizing this. I think we have had a rich offering. And
absolutely.
I just want to thank all of you who are modern mindfulness teachers, spreading this across the borders of the world. Each and every one of you should feel very good about what you're doing. We're silently below the radar. We are giving this world what it really needs.
I should translate that, I think.
Yeah, give them my appreciation.
Yeah. I began to type, but I think it's worth just vocalizing anyway. Шинзен говорит о том, что мы может быть, мы работаем под радарами, но то есть это незаметное какое-то воздействие, но это что-то, что имеет смысл, что требуется этому миру, что имеет смысл здесь делать, что это что-то важное, поэтому имеет смысл чувствовать себя крутыми молодцами, что вы этим занимаетесь, и он благодарит всех, что вы выбираете этим заниматься. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Have a great day, and we'll have a great night.
Catch you later.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.